Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his face as he walked across the rocky surface of Kepler 442b. The moon was cold and dead, but his suit kept him warm. He had been walking for 3 hours now, looking at broken pieces of metal and stone scattered everywhere. This place used to be a battlefield, but that was thousands of years ago. "Morrison, come look at this," Commander Lisa Park called through the radio. Her voice sounded excited. Jake turned and saw her standing near a big crater about 50 feet away. He walked over to where she was pointing her scanner at something in the ground. Dr. Marcus Webb was already there, digging carefully with his tools. Webb was the team's expert on alien things. He spent most of his time studying old ruins and dead civilizations. Right now, he looked more excited than Jake had ever seen him. "What did you find?" Jake asked, looking down into the hole Webb was making. "Something big," Webb said without looking up. "The readings are off the charts. This isn't just another piece of wreckage." Jake knelt down next to the hole. He could see something smooth and dark buried in the dirt. It looked different from all the broken metal pieces they had been finding all day. This thing seemed to glow, with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Step back, Morrison," Park ordered. "Let Webb do his job." But as Jake started to move away, something strange happened. The glowing thing in the ground began to move. Not just a little bit, but actually lifting itself up out of the dirt. Webb dropped his tools and jumped backward. "What the hell is that?" Park shouted. The object rose up and hovered in the air right in front of Jake. It was beautiful and scary at the same time. It looked like a rifle, but not like any weapon Jake had ever seen. The metal was smooth and curved like it had grown instead of being built. Blue light flowed through lines carved into its surface. Jake reached out his hand toward it. The weapon moved closer to him, floating just inches from his fingers. He could feel warmth coming from it and something else. It felt like the weapon was looking at him, studying him. "Don't touch it," Webb yelled, but Jake wasn't listening anymore. When Jake's fingers touched the weapon, everything changed. The blue light got brighter and Jake felt a strange tingling in his head. The weapon settled into his hands like it belonged there. It felt perfect, like he had been holding it his whole life. Park tried to grab the weapon from Jake, but she couldn't get close. Some kind of invisible wall pushed her back every time she reached for it. Webb tried too, then the other team members. None of them could even touch the thing. "It won't let anyone else near it," Webb said, staring at Jake with wide eyes. "It's choosing you." Jake held the weapon and looked at it closely. Now that he was touching it, he could see that it wasn't really metal at all. It felt alive somehow, warm and smooth like skin. Strange symbols appeared on its surface, glowing and changing as he watched. "We need to get back to the ship," Park said. She sounded worried and excited at the same time. "Command needs to know about this right away." They walked back to their landing site, Jake carrying the alien weapon. It stayed calm in his hands, but every time someone else got too close, a soft blue barrier appeared around Jake. The weapon was protecting him, or maybe protecting itself from everyone else. Back on their ship, the Harmony, Captain Helen Torres looked at the weapon with amazement. She was a tough woman who had seen a lot of strange things in space, but this was different. This was something that could change everything. "Have you tried to put it down?" Torres asked Jake. Jake tried to set the weapon on a table, but it wouldn't. "Stay there." As soon as he let go, it floated back to his hands. When he walked away from it, the weapon followed him like a loyal dog. "It's bonded to you somehow," Webb said, running his scanners over both Jake and the weapon. "The energy readings show some kind of connection between you two." Dr. Caroline Fisher, the team's language expert, was studying the symbols on the weapon. "These aren't just decorations," she said. "They're some kind of writing, but not like anything I've ever seen. They seem to change based on what Jake is thinking or feeling." Jake sat down in a chair, still holding the weapon. He was tired and confused. Why had this thing chosen him? He was just a regular soldier. He wasn't special or smart like the scientists on the team. "Sir," Torres said to Park, "I'm sending a message to Earth Command right now. They need to know what we found here." Jake closed his eyes and tried to understand what was happening to him. The weapon felt warm in his hands, almost comfortable now. When he concentrated, he could almost hear something. Not words exactly, but feelings. The weapon was trying to tell him something, but he couldn't understand what. Over the next few hours, the team ran every test they could think of. The weapon wouldn't work for anyone but Jake. It wouldn't even let other people touch it. But when Jake held it, amazing things happened. It created small holograms in the air, showing star maps and strange symbols. It made sounds like music, beautiful and sad at the same time. "This changes everything," Torres said to Park as they watched Jake experiment with the weapon. "If this thing is really choosing humans, or at least one human, then we're not alone in the universe. And we might not be as helpless as we thought." Park nodded, but she looked worried. "The question is why Jake, and what does this weapon want from him?" Jake couldn't answer that question yet, but he was starting to think that finding this weapon wasn't an accident. Something had been waiting for them on this dead moon. Something had been waiting for him. As the Harmony prepared to leave Kepler 442b and head back to Earth, Jake stood at a window looking out at the stars. The weapon floated next to him, its blue light reflecting off the glass. He had the feeling that his life had just changed forever, and that this was only the beginning of something much bigger than he could imagine. 3 weeks had passed since they left Kepler 442b, and Jake was getting used to his strange new companion. The weapon, which he had started calling the Guardian's Edge, after seeing that name in one of its holographic displays, never left his side. It floated near him when he walked, rested on his lap when he sat, and even hovered by his bed when he slept. The weapon was getting smarter, or maybe Jake was getting better at understanding it. Every day it showed him new things. Today it was projecting a three-dimensional map of space above the dining table where Jake sat eating breakfast. The map showed star systems he had never seen before, with symbols marking different planets and routes between them. Dr. Caroline Fisher sat across from him, taking notes as fast as she could write. "The symbols are becoming clearer," she said, pointing to the floating display. "I think this one means home, and this one might mean danger or enemy." Jake touched one of the symbols with his finger, and the map changed. Now it showed a single solar system with several planets. One planet was marked with a symbol that made Jake feel sad, though he didn't know why. "That's where they came from," Jake said suddenly. The words came out of his mouth before he realized he was going to say them. "Who came from where?" Fisher asked. Jake stared at the holographic planet. "The ones who made this weapon. They're all dead now." Fisher wrote down everything Jake said. She had been doing this for weeks, recording every word that came out of his mouth when he was connected to the weapon. Dr. Marcus Webb thought the weapon was somehow putting information directly into Jake's brain. That night, Jake had the dreams again. They were getting stronger and more clear each time. In the dreams, he wasn't Jake Morrison anymore. He was someone else. Someone tall and strong with 4 arms and skin that changed colors like a chameleon. He was a warrior of a proud race called the Viridian. In the dream, Jake stood on a high tower looking out over a beautiful city. The buildings were made of the same smooth material as the weapon, and they glowed with soft light. Flying vehicles moved between the towers like schools of fish. It was the most beautiful place Jake had ever seen. But then the dream changed. The sky turned dark, and huge black ships appeared above the city. They didn't look like normal spaceships. They looked alive, like giant insects made of metal and shadow. When they opened fire, the beautiful city began to burn. Jake woke up sweating and breathing hard. The Guardian's Edge was floating next to his bed, glowing brighter than usual. He could feel emotions coming from it. Sadness, anger, and something else. "Hope, you're trying to tell me something," Jake whispered to the weapon, "but I don't understand what you want me to do." The next morning, Jake told Dr. Susan Clark about his dreams. Clark was the ship's medical officer, and she had been monitoring Jake's brain activity while he slept. She showed him the readings on her computer screen. "Your brain is more active during these dreams than it should be," Clark said. "It's like someone is downloading information directly into your head. But the strange thing is, your brain seems to be adapting to it. You're not showing any signs of damage or stress." "So the weapon isn't hurting me?" Jake asked. "I don't think so. If anything, it seems to be helping you. Your reflexes are faster, your vision is sharper, and you're solving problems better than before. Whatever this thing is doing to you, it's making you stronger." Jake nodded, but he was worried about something else. Paul Adams, one of the ship's engineers, had been asking questions about the weapon. Adams thought it was dangerous, that it might be controlling Jake's mind. Some of the other crew members were starting to agree with him. "What if Adams is right?" Jake asked Clark. "What if this thing is changing me into something that isn't human anymore?" Clark looked at him carefully. "Are you still you, Jake? Do you still care about the same things? Do you still want to protect people?" Jake thought about it. "Yes, more than before, actually. Sometimes I look at the crew and I feel like I would do anything to keep them safe." "Then you're still human," Clark said. "Maybe just a better version of yourself." That afternoon, the ship's long-range sensors picked up something that made everyone stop what they were doing. Captain Torres called all senior staff to the bridge immediately. "We've got multiple contacts approaching from deep space," Torres announced, pointing to the main screen. 27 ships, all of them bigger than anything we've ever seen. Jake looked at the sensor readings and felt a chill run down his spine. The Guardian's edge began to vibrate in his hands, and its blue light turned red for the first time since he had found it. "Those aren't human ships," Dr. Webb said, studying the data. "The technology is completely alien." The weapon in Jake's hands grew warm, then hot. Images flashed through his mind, memories that weren't his own. He saw the same black ships from his dreams, the ones that had destroyed the beautiful Viridian city. They were coming here to human space. "Captain," Jake said, his voice sounding strange even to himself. "We need to warn Earth right now. Those ships are going to attack us." "How do you know that?" Torres asked. Jake held up the Guardian's edge, which was now pulsing with angry red light. "Because they've done this before. They destroyed the race that made this weapon, and now they're coming for us." Torres immediately sent an emergency message to Earth Command, but Jake knew it might be too late. The enemy fleet was moving fast, faster than any human ship could travel. They would reach Earth's outer colonies within days. "What do they want?" Torres asked. Jake closed his eyes and let the weapon's memories flow through him. He saw world after world burning, entire civilizations wiped out in a matter of hours. The enemy didn't just kill people, they took everything. Knowledge, technology, even the memories of the dead. They consumed entire species and left nothing behind. "They want everything," Jake said quietly. "They want to erase us completely." That night, as the Harmony raced toward Earth at maximum speed, Jake stood alone in the observation deck. The Guardian's edge floated beside him, its light now a steady, determined blue. Through the weapon's connection, Jake could feel the approaching enemy like a cold wind in his mind. But he could also feel something else. The weapon wasn't just a tool for fighting, it was a teacher, a guardian that had waited thousands of years for someone who could learn from the mistakes of the past. It had chosen him not because he was the strongest or the smartest, but because he was human. And being human, Jake was starting to realize, might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The enemy was coming, but Jake Morrison was no longer just a simple soldier. He was the inheritor of an ancient legacy, the keeper of knowledge from a dead civilization and possibly humanity's only hope for survival. The real war was about to begin. The enemy ships reached Earth's outer colonies faster than anyone expected. Jake watched the news reports from the bridge of the Harmony, his hands gripping the Guardian's edge so tightly his knuckles were white. The weapon was showing him everything, through its connection to his mind, and what he saw made him sick. The colony on Titan fell first. The attacking ships didn't look like normal spaceships at all. They were black and twisted, like metal nightmares that moved through space without engines or visible weapons. They simply appeared near the colony, and then Titan went dark. No explosions, no fighting, just silence. 12,000 people lived on Titan, Captain Torres said, her voice hollow. Now there's nothing but empty buildings. Admiral Richard Stone appeared on the communication screen from his flagship, the Washington. Stone was a tough old man who had fought in 3 different wars, but Jake had never seen him look scared before. "The enemy fleet is moving toward Mars," Stone reported. "We've got every ship in the system moving to intercept them, but I'll be honest with you. Our weapons aren't even scratching their hulls." Jake stood up, the Guardian's Edge floating beside him. Admiral, I need to talk to you about these enemies. The weapon is showing me things about them. What kind of things, son? Jake closed his
eyes and let the memories flow through him. They're called the Nexthal. They're not like us at all. They don't have individual minds. They're all connected, like parts of one giant brain.
And they've been doing this for millions of years. The Admiral leaned forward. Doing what? Finding civilizations and eating them, not just killing people, but taking everything they know, everything they've built, everything they are. They absorb it all and leave the worlds empty. Through the Guardian's Edge, Jake could see the battle happening near Mars. Human ships were firing everything they had at the Nexthal vessels, but the alien ships just absorbed the energy from the weapons and used it to make themselves stronger. Worse, when human ships got too close, the Nexthal would send out boarding parties. Jake watched in horror as the alien boarders cut through the hull of a human cruiser. They looked like spiders made of living metal with dozens of thin arms that could change shape instantly. When they touched human technology, they learned how to use it in seconds. When they touched humans, the people just stopped moving and stood there with blank eyes. They're not just killing our people, Jake said. They're taking over their minds. Admiral, Stone's face went pale. How many ships do they have? Jake asked the Guardian's Edge, and the answer came back immediately. 237 combat vessels plus support ships. But Admiral, that's not the worst part. What could be worse than that? This isn't their main fleet, this is just a scouting force. They're testing us to see if we're worth their time. The communication line went quiet for a long moment. Then, Stone spoke again. Son, that weapon of yours, can it help us fight these things? Jake looked down at the Guardian's Edge. It was showing him more memories now. Battles from long ago when the Viridian had tried to fight the Nexthal. Every conventional attack had failed. The Nexthal ships could phase in and out of normal space, making them impossible to hit. Their weapons drained energy from anything they touched, and their hive mind let them adapt to any strategy within minutes. The Viridian tried everything, Jake said. Better ships, stronger weapons, smarter tactics, nothing worked. Then how do we stop them? Jake was quiet for a moment, reading the deeper memories stored in the weapon. The Viridian never figured it out. That's why they're all dead. But the Guardian's Edge learned something from watching them fail. It learned that the Nexthal have one weakness. What weakness? Their hive mind. All their ships, all their soldiers, they're all connected through something called quantum entanglement networks. If you can disrupt those networks, you can confuse them, maybe even shut them down. Admiral Stone nodded grimly. Can your weapon do that? Maybe, but I would have to get close to their command ship. Really close. The battle for Mars lasted 6 hours. Jake watched it all through the Guardian's Edge, feeling helpless as human ships were destroyed one by one. The Nexthal didn't even seem to be trying very hard. They were playing with the human fleet like a cat playing with mice. But Jake was learning something important from watching the battle. The Guardian's Edge was showing him patterns in how the Nexthal moved and fought. They weren't as random as they looked. Everything they did followed the commands from their hive mind, and the hive mind followed predictable patterns. I think I know how to hurt them, Jake said to Torres. But I need a small, fast ship and a crew crazy enough to fly it straight into the middle of their fleet. Torres looked at him like he had lost his mind. That's suicide, Morrison. Maybe. But if we don't try, they're going to do to Earth what they did to Titan and Mars. 2 hours later, Mars went dark just like Titan had. 20 million people gone in seconds. The Nexthal fleet began moving toward Earth's moon, where another 5 million people waited in the lunar cities. Jake stood in the shuttle bay of the Harmony, looking at the small scout ship that Torres had assigned to his mission. It was fast and quiet, designed for sneaking past enemy patrols. Perfect for what he had in mind, except for the part where he probably wouldn't survive it. Amy Rodriguez, the best pilot on the ship, was already running pre-flight checks. You sure about this, Morrison? Because once we get close to those alien ships, there's no running away. I'm sure, Jake said, even though he wasn't. The Guardian's Edge was humming with energy, ready for whatever was coming. Besides, someone has to try. Carl Johnson, the demolitions expert, was loading special equipment into the scout ship. If this quantum network thing is real, we might be able to mess it up with an electromagnetic pulse, he said. I've rigged up the biggest EMP generator I could build. Dana Mitchell, the communications specialist, looked up from her equipment. I've got gear that can boost whatever signal your weapon sends out. If we can find the right frequency, maybe we can jam their whole network. As they prepared to launch, Jake felt the Guardian's edge showing him one more memory. It was from the final battle of the Viridian War. A Viridian warrior, much like Jake, had tried the same desperate mission, flying alone into the heart of the Nexthul fleet. He had failed, but not completely. For just a few minutes, he had managed to disrupt their network and give his people hope. The Guardian's edge had been learning from that failure for thousands of years, waiting for another chance to try again. Now it had chosen Jake, and he was determined not to let it down. Launch when ready, Jake told Rodriguez as he strapped himself into his seat. Outside the window, the Nexthul fleet was getting closer to Earth's moon. Soon they would be close enough to start draining the life from another human world. But Jake Morrison wasn't going to let that happen. He had an alien weapon that had waited millennia for this moment, and he had something the Viridian had never possessed. He had the stubborn, crazy courage that made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. The scout ship launched into space, heading straight toward the most dangerous enemy humanity had ever faced. The scout ship slipped through space like a ghost, its engines running almost silent as Amy Rodriguez guided it between the massive Nexthul vessels. Jake sat in the co-pilot seat, the Guardian's edge floating in front of him and projecting a tactical display that showed every enemy ship in the fleet. There, Jake whispered, pointing to the largest vessel at the center of the formation. It was 3 times bigger than any human battleship, shaped like a twisted spider with dozens of arms reaching out in all directions. That's their command ship. It's beautiful in a horrible way, Dana Mitchell said from her station behind them. And completely covered in weapons that I don't recognize. Carl Johnson was checking his EMP device one more time. How close do we need to get? Jake asked the Guardian's edge, and the answer came back in images and feelings rather than words. Inside their shields. Maybe inside the ship itself. Amy Rodriguez turned to look at him. You're talking about flying into the belly of that monster and setting off an electromagnetic pulse while we're still inside it. That's the plan. That's a terrible plan. Jake couldn't argue with her. It was a terrible plan, but it was the only one they had. Through the Guardian's edge, he could feel the Nexthul hive mind working all around them. It was like being in an ocean of cold, hungry thoughts. The alien collective consciousness was already planning how to strip Earth of everything valuable before moving on to the next system. But as they got closer to the command ship, Jake began to understand something that the Guardian's edge had been trying to tell him for weeks. The weapon hadn't just chosen him because he was brave, or because he could fight. It had chosen him because he was human, and humans were different from the Viridian in ways that mattered. Amy, change of plans, Jake said suddenly. We're not going to attack their ship. What? Then what are we doing out here? Jake stood up, the Guardian's edge moving with him. We're going to talk to them. Carl nearly dropped his EMP device. Talk to them? Jake, these things just killed 30 million people without saying a word. I don't think they're interested in conversation. That's because no one has ever tried to talk to them before, Jake said. Every species they've encountered has either run away or tried to fight them. But humans do something different. We try to understand our enemies. Dana looked up from her communications gear. Even if you're right, how do you talk to a hive mind? They don't have individuals to negotiate with. The Guardian's edge can connect to their quantum network, Jake said, the knowledge flowing into his mind as he spoke. Instead of disrupting it, I can use it to communicate directly with their collective consciousness. Amy Rodriguez stared at him. That sounds even more dangerous than the EMP plan. Maybe. But the Guardian's edge is showing me something. Every species the Nexthul have absorbed, they've taken their knowledge and technology, but they've never actually understood them. They consume without learning, take without growing. They've never encountered anything like human creativity or compassion. Jake sat back down and placed his hands on the Guardian's edge. Immediately, his mind was flooded with memories from dozens of extinct civilizations. The Viridian had been warriors, proud and strong but focused only on military solutions. The Kalari had been scientists, brilliant but cold and logical. The Threnodi had been artists, beautiful but isolated and afraid. All of them tried to fight the Nexthul the same way, Jake said. With force or by running away. None of them ever tried to show the Nexthul who they really were. And you think that will work? Carl asked. I think it's our only chance, Amy. Rodriguez sighed and turned back to her controls. All right, Morrison, you're the one with the magic alien weapon. How do we do this? Jake closed his eyes and let the Guardian's edge guide him. Take us right up to their command ship. Not attacking, just approaching slowly. Let them see that we're not afraid. Speak for yourself, Dana muttered, but she began preparing her equipment to boost whatever signal Jake was planning to send. The scout ship moved closer to the Nexthul command vessel. Jake could feel the alien hive mind noticing them, thousands of cold thoughts focusing on their small ship. Weapon systems locked onto them from every direction, but something made the Nexthul hesitate. Maybe it was the presence of the Guardians' edge, or maybe they were curious about what these strange humans were trying to do. Now, Jake whispered. He pressed his consciousness against the Guardian's edge and felt it reach out through space toward the Nexthul network. The connection formed instantly, and Jake's mind was suddenly filled with the alien hive consciousness. It was vast and cold and hungry, like an ocean of ice that had been freezing for millions of years. But instead of trying to fight it or hide from it, Jake did something that no other species had ever attempted. He opened his mind completely and let the Nexthul see what it meant to be human. He showed them a memory of his childhood, playing with his sister in their backyard, while their mother watched from the kitchen window. He showed them the first time he had fallen in love, the joy and pain and beautiful confusion of caring about someone else more than himself. He showed them music and art and poetry, the strange human need to create beauty, even when the world was ugly. The Nexthul hive mind recoiled from the contact, confused and disturbed by what they were experiencing. They had absorbed the knowledge of thousands of species, but they had never felt emotions like these: love, hope, sacrifice, compassion. These concepts existed in their stolen memories, but they had never understood what they meant. Jake pushed deeper into the connection, showing them more. He showed them humans helping strangers in disasters, soldiers dying to protect people they had never met, scientists working for decades on problems that might not be solved in their lifetimes. He showed them the stubborn human belief that even the worst enemy could change, could become something better. For the first time in their millions of years of existence, the Nexthul collective consciousness experienced doubt. They had always believed that consumption was the only way to grow, that taking from others was the natural order of the universe. But these humans were showing them something different. They were showing them that it was possible to create instead of just taking, to build, instead of just destroying. The connection held for only a few minutes before the strain became too much for Jake's mind. He collapsed in his chair, blood running from his nose, but he had done something impossible. He had made the Nexthul think. All around them, the alien fleet had stopped moving. For the first time since the invasion began, the Nexthul ships were just floating in space, not attacking, not advancing. The hive mind was paralyzed by the new concepts Jake had forced into it. It worked, Amy whispered, staring at her sensors. They've stopped, Jake smiled, even though he felt like his head was splitting open. Phase 1 complete. There's a Phase 2? Carl asked. There's always a Phase 2, Jake said, holding the Guardian's edge as it pulsed with warm, hopeful light. Now we see. If they're smart enough to choose cooperation over conquest. Outside their ship, the Nexthul command vessel was beginning to change. Its weapons were retracting and new structures were forming on its hull. For the first time in their history, the Nexthul were trying to communicate instead of simply taking what they wanted. Jake Morrison had just done something that would change the galaxy forever. He had shown the most dangerous species in the universe that there was another way to live, another way to grow, another way to exist. Now he just had to hope they would choose it. The Nexthul command ship had been changing for 3 hours now. Jake watched through the scout ship's windows as the alien vessel grew new structures that looked like communication arrays. The whole fleet had stopped its advance toward Earth and was just floating in space, waiting. "They're trying to talk back," Dana Mitchell said, monitoring the communication frequencies. "I'm getting signals on channels I didn't even know existed." Jake held the Guardian's edge, feeling the weapon's connection to the alien hive mind. The Nexthul collective consciousness was struggling with the new concepts he had shown them. For millions of years, they had only known how to take and consume. Now they were trying to understand what it meant to create and share. "Amy, take us closer to their ship," Jake said. "They want to communicate properly, but they don't know how." Amy Rodriguez looked at him like he was crazy. "Closer? Jake, that thing could vaporize us without even trying." "They won't. They're curious now. They want to understand us." As their scout ship approached the Nexthul command vessel, Jake felt the alien minds reaching out to him again through the Guardian's edge. But this time they weren't trying to consume or control. They were trying to learn. The communication came not in words but in images and feelings. Jake saw flashes of the Nexthul history, their long journey across the galaxy, consuming civilization after civilization. But now he also felt their confusion and their strange new hunger for something more than just absorption. "They're asking questions," Jake said to his team. "They want to know why humans create art when it serves no practical purpose. They want to know why we help people who can't help us in return. They want to know why we choose hope even when everything looks hopeless." Carl Johnson shook his head. "How do you explain hope to a hive mind that's been destroying worlds for millions of years?" "The same way you explain it to anyone," Jake said. "You show them." Jake pressed his consciousness against the Guardian's edge again, but this time he was ready for the connection. Instead of just showing the Nexthul human memories, he invited them to experience human emotions directly through the weapon's link. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The entire Nexthul fleet shuddered as their hive mind experienced human compassion for the first time. They felt what it was like to love someone more than yourself, to sacrifice for strangers, to believe in something better even when the world was dark. But Jake didn't stop there. He showed them human creativity, the strange joy that came from making something new just because it could be made. He showed them human curiosity, the need to explore and learn not for profit, but for the simple pleasure of understanding. Most importantly, he showed them human forgiveness, the ability to look at even the worst enemy and see the possibility for change. The response from the Nexthul was unlike anything Jake had expected. The hive mind didn't reject these concepts or try to twist them into something they could consume. Instead, they embraced them with the desperate hunger of beings who had been starving without knowing it. Suddenly, the communication arrays on. The Nexthul ship began broadcasting on every frequency Dana's equipment could detect. The aliens were sending messages throughout their entire network, sharing the new concepts with Nexthul fleets across the galaxy. "They're not just talking to us anymore," Dana said, her eyes wide as she watched the data streams. "They're talking to themselves, trying to understand what they've been missing all this time." Through the Guardian's edge, Jake could feel the Nexthul collective consciousness changing. It was like watching a frozen ocean begin to thaw. The cold, hungry thoughts that had dominated their minds for millennia were warming, becoming something new and strange and wonderful. "What's happening to them?" Amy asked. Jake smiled, even though the mental connection was exhausting him. "They're becoming individuals. For the first time in their history, different parts of their hive mind are thinking different thoughts, making different choices." The change spread through the Nexthul fleet like wildfire. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination began to break formation as their crews started making independent decisions. Some vessels turned away from Earth entirely. Others approached slowly, broadcasting what Jake's team soon realized were requests for peaceful contact. But not all of the Nexthul accepted the change. Jake felt a surge of anger and rejection from part of the hive mind, the portion that couldn't let go of their old ways. About 30 ships broke away from the main fleet and began advancing toward Earth again, their weapons charging. Some of them don't want to change, Jake said. They'd rather destroy us than become something different. What do we do about them? Carl asked. Jake stood up, the Guardian's Edge floating beside him and glowing brighter than ever before. We show them what happens when you choose creation over destruction. He reached out through the weapons connection, but this time he wasn't targeting the resistant Nexthul ships. Instead, he connected with every human ship in the system, every space station, every communication relay. Through the Guardian's Edge, he sent a message that reached every human in the solar system at the same time. The message was simple. Don't fight them. Show them who we are. What happened next would be remembered as the most beautiful moment in human history. Instead of firing weapons at the approaching Nexthul ships, humans began broadcasting everything that made them who they were. Music poured out from Earth's radio stations. Art galleries uploaded their entire collections to open networks. Libraries shared their books freely. People sent personal messages about love, hope, and dreams for the future. The resistant Nexthul ships found themselves surrounded not by weapons but by the complete expression of human culture. They were bombarded with symphonies and paintings, poetry and stories, messages of welcome from children who had never seen an alien but believed that friendship was possible anyway. It was too much. The last holdouts of the old Nexthul consciousness couldn't resist the overwhelming demonstration of human creativity and compassion. One by one, their weapons powered down, and their ships joined the others in peaceful orbit around Earth. Jake felt the moment when the last of the Nexthul resistance crumbled. The alien hive mind didn't disappear, but it transformed into something completely new. Instead of a single cold consciousness focused on consumption, it became a network of individuals connected by shared purpose and mutual understanding. We did it, Amy whispered. We actually did it. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Guardian's Edge was showing him visions of the future, images of humans and Nexthul working together to rebuild the worlds that had been consumed. The weapon itself was changing too, its military programming evolving into something designed to create rather than destroy. Over the following months, Jake worked with both human and Nexthul scientists to understand what had happened. The Guardian's Edge had been waiting for thousands of years for a species that could show the Nexthul a different way to exist. Not through superior firepower or better technology, but through the simple demonstration that cooperation was stronger than conquest. The weapon chose other bearers too, individuals from different species who had survived Nexthul attacks and now worked to rebuild their civilizations. Each Guardian's Edge adapted to its bearer's species, amplifying their unique strengths and helping them contribute to the growing galactic community. Jake often stood at the observation windows of the new joint human-Nexthul research station, watching ships from dozens of species work together in ways that would have been impossible just a year before. The Guardian's Edge still floated near him, but it felt different now. Less like a weapon, and more like a tool for building bridges between minds that had never understood each other before. Do you ever regret it? Amy Rodriguez asked him one day, as they watched a Nexthul construction ship helping to rebuild the colony on Mars. Regret what? Choosing to talk instead of fight. A lot of people died before we figured out how to reach them. Jake was quiet for a moment, feeling the weight of all the lives that had been lost. Every war has casualties, he said finally, but this was the first war that ended with everyone winning. The Guardian's Edge pulsed with warm light, and Jake felt its agreement. The weapon had been created by a species that believed in protecting others, but it had learned something new from humans. Sometimes the best way to protect people wasn't to destroy their enemies, but to help those enemies become friends. And for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy was at peace. Not because the strongest side had won, but because someone had been brave enough to believe that even the worst enemy could choose to become something better. Jake Morrison had saved humanity not by being the greatest warrior, but by being the most human. And that, the Guardian's Edge had learned, was the most powerful weapon of all.